Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through some books that I've gotten over the last couple of months, but before jumping into the books themselves, I thought I'd do a very quick little story time about the fact that I recently fractured my pinky toe on my right foot. I had a community tab post about this, and I do appreciate a lot of the well wishes. Also, I appreciated the very silly toe puns that some of you left. During this live show over on my side channel, Full Meta Analysis, myself and my husband and two of our friends were discussing the Apothecary Diaries, bringing that up once again. While we were having the discussion, they all knew at some point I was going to have to very quickly feed my dog Luna Bear, sweet precious Luna Bear. So during the live show, once we got to that point, I just muted my mic, turned off my camera, and I didn't want to miss my friends' responses to the questions because I had been so eagerly awaiting this discussion. So I ran down the hall, and I had this door frame where, as I was running, I caught the side of my foot on the door frame and just ran so hard into it. And as most of us do when we stub our toes or hit our feet on something, I just sat there and, absorbed the fact that I just hit my foot really hard. And then I looked down at my foot and saw that my pinky toe was completely facing the wrong direction. It was, if this is your foot and this is the pinky toe, it was just facing that way. I thought, let me just feed the dog and then I'll go back to the live show and I'll just power through. It's fine. Everything's fine. I sat down, turned my mic back on, turned the camera back on, and then started to engage in the conversation again. And it's kind of funny because you can actually see me wincing a decent amount after I turn my camera back on. You also see at some point I am taking some ibuprofen. Luna Bear, she ruined it because she came in, because I was trying really hard to power through. She came in and she just started licking my foot, which is really sweet. But at the same time, then I was distracted because I'm already kind of in pain and now my dog is licking me and I was like, oh, sorry, Luna's licking me. I think I just broke my toe, and then Sean and my friends were like, what? And I told them, yes, indeed, but it's fine. We can keep chatting. And then all of them were like, no. So they forced me to stop. Luckily, it was far enough into the live show that we got to talk about a lot of things that we were planning to talk about anyway. But I feel really stupid. That is the very exciting story of how I fractured my toe. It was indeed painful. And on that note though, let's segue away from foot stuff and actually talk about some books. So as usual, when I talk about books that I have gotten recently, I like to shout out my indie bookstores. So I will have linked in the description bar Bookman's and Changing Hands, of which these first couple of books did come from. So the first one is called A Certain Hunger. I don't know basically anything about this book, but I decided to give it a go because of the fact that at a lot of indie bookstores, there will be staff recommendations, and at the front of Bookman's in particular, they have a lot of the staff recommendations. There is one particular person that every single book that they had recommended is a book that I like, and I thought, who is this magical unicorn book twin of mine that works here? Because this is uncanny, the amount of books, and they're not necessarily even all exactly the same kind, because I know that within certain bookish niches, there are certain ones that you expect if people like this, they're probably going to like this too. But it was a pretty wide mix of fantasy books, and this was one of the only books that I haven't picked up that they recommended, so I thought, okay, we have pretty similar tastes on everything else, and I don't know anything about this book, so I'm going to give it a try. And I want to keep it that way. I want to go in without really knowing anything about the plot or the characters and just jump in and see what my experience is with this. Because if so, it's, I don't know, 10 for 10 when it comes to me and whoever this mystery person is. After that, we have a couple of novellas that are a part of a series. I believe that this is technically a trilogy of novellas, but they only had 2 of the 3 at my local bookstore Changing Hands, and that would be The Lies of Unjungo and The Truth of the Aleki. I've seen these 2 books praised by a couple of people who, whenever they talk about books, I always find my interest is piqued, even if I don't 100% align with them, and one of them would be an account that I follow on Instagram, who actually, I believe, sells bookish themed tea. So if you're a tea drinker, I'll have them linked and definitely give them a follow or check out their tea if you're a tea drinker. But another individual would be Tori, whose channel I'll have linked down below. I believe Tori mentioned these quite a while ago, and I remember at the time thinking that they sounded interesting. And then when the other account mentioned them not that long ago, I was like, okay, that's just kind of further reminding me that I really want to check these out. Over the last couple of years, I have found a lot of fantasy authors have somewhat transformed my view of shorter fantasy. I know myself and a lot of us like to get lost in these epic worlds, but on occasion there are certain authors that just have a gift for telling stories, oftentimes in more of almost a folktale type of way, where you very quickly find yourself engaged with the story. And then you come away thinking that was the perfect amount of time, and you really respect just how much they were able to pack a punch in so little time. So I'm really hopeful that that's going to happen with this story as well. Also, because I'm talking about my local bookstores, you can see on the front these stickers. And originally this book was almost $20 and it was $8 at Changing Hands. Also, this one was originally $25 and it was $9.99 at Changing Hands, and I had store credit. After that, I am so excited for this series. We have the Copper Cat trilogy by Jen Williams. I have been shouting from the rooftops about the Winnowing Flame trilogy by the same author for years. And Winnowing Flame, similar to this series for a long time, was not the most accessible because it was more readily available in the UK. Even if you wanted to get physical copies, I believe they were shipped from the UK. And the audiobooks, as far as I know, for this series, I don't think they're available yet in the US. I know Jen Williams has also written the Talon Sister duology. I believe the audiobooks aren't available for those either. And I think you also have to get those shipped in, or at least when I got those, I had to get them shipped in from the UK. So it's not really easy to get a hold of Jen Williams's books. But this series is actually an older backlist series. And I have had, of course, my interest piqued ever since I picked up Winnowing Flame for anything Jen Williams. And when I saw the Broken Binding was going to be doing a set, I was like, oh, yay. Because I've wanted to get a hold of these for quite a while. They are the same size as the Winnowing Flame trilogy set that the Broken Binding did, which is really exciting. I don't know that these come out in hardback either anymore or if they ever did, so I'm also really grateful that Broken Binding made these hardback editions. They have colored edges here, and then they also have a stamp, and it is signed by the author. Next up, we have a book that was sent to me by the author, so a huge thank you to them for sending this to me. And also, I have read the first few books in this series, and I have really thoroughly enjoyed them. If you are somebody who is looking for a classic A Boy and His Dragon story, and you miss that sort of epic fantasy world that you can just get so easily lost within, definitely check out Ascendant. But I was sent the next book in the series, book 4, which is called Reckoning. I am so excited to keep going with this series. It is one of my favorite dragon fantasy stories. I don't want to say too much else though, because of course I think jumping into it and just knowing bare bones is the best way to go in, or at least in this instance I think it is. And if you're looking to support some indie authors, this is a self-published series and I think it's fantastic. There's a reason a lot of people who pick this one up come to not only love it, but find that they just end up feeling so nostalgic after picking it up. And it's because it just taps into something that I think speaks to what so many of us fell in love with fantasy for in the first place. Next up, we have The Art of Legend. The first book in this series came out a few years ago, and when it came out, I made a book review, and I think I titled it something like, "This new fantasy book is going under the radar," because it was such a fun fantasy story. I know sometimes some of us are looking for ones that are providing more types of social commentary on things, or sometimes we look for the most intense, interesting world, or we look for genre blenders. There's a lot of different reasons that we want to go into a fantasy story, but I definitely felt like the first book in the series, The Art of Prophecy, was taking the chosen one trope and then kind of flipping it on its head, and then doing something really fun with the mentor-mentee dynamic. I always describe as it feels like a Jackie Chan movie in book form, as the way that the action is written is really invigorating. You feel like you're there. It's fun, but also it feels intense at the same time. And in general, I just had such a good time with that. However, when the second book came out, there wasn't really a release date in sight for the third book. And I was afraid that if I picked up the second, then I'd have to wait a really long time for the conclusion. So I decided instead that I would wait, and then once the third book came out, I would potentially just go back and reread the first book, but at the very least, I would then continue on so that I could go from the second into the third right away. And this is the third installment. And I am so excited to see how the rest of this story plays out. And if you are interested in that review, I will have that linked in the description bar. After that, we have The Land of the Living and the Dead by Shauna Lawless. Many of you know that I have fallen in love with The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. I picked that up earlier this year, immediately shot up to being one of my favorite historical fantasy books I've ever picked up. And I had checked it out from the library. Since then, one of you very kindly did whatever it's called on YouTube, super bucks or something like that. One of you very kindly sent $25 in Superbucks so that I could get a copy of the book, which I thought was so incredibly generous, so thank you so much for that. And I looked so many times at my local bookstores, but I think similar to Jen Williams, this is not as easily accessible in the US as it is in the UK. So I checked my local indie bookstores many a time, and they never had it. So I figured, okay, I'll go ahead and get this from Barnes & Noble. And I ordered from Barnes & Noble, but the first and second are on back order, so I don't know if I'm going to get my copies of those, but at least the third one has come in. So I have the third book at this point. I can't wait to keep going with the series. It's one of those where I have so many other things I need to get to first, but I kind of want to not. I just want to put everything else down so I could keep going with this series because I so eagerly want to know what happens next. Next up, we have the Apothecary Diaries art book. I do like getting art books for certain things that I really, really love. For example, I have one for Full Metal Alchemist, I have one for Arcane, and one for Final Fantasy. So when I saw the art book for Apothecary Diaries, I was like, well, I do love Apothecary Diaries, but also my husband was like, well, you have to get it because he also enjoys it. He knows how much I'm obsessed with it. But additionally, we just recently celebrated 10 years married, and so Sean's like, oh, it's perfect. You can get it as like a 10 years married present. So I did. I was like, oh, okay, I guess you've convinced me. And I went ahead and got it, and I love it so much. And it's so beautiful without its sleeve too. If you take off the sleeve, the naked hardback has this beautiful artwork of our main character on the front, and then I'm actually kind of surprised they went with this on the back. If you've only watched the anime, this character has not shown up yet. So you're not like, wait, what? Did I miss something? No, don't worry, you haven't missed anything. But regardless, I love Apothecary Diaries so much. So much. So much so that I broke my toe in an effort to get back to talking about it. Moving on from there, next up we have The Witch Who Stormed the Palace. This is the sequel to the first book it's called The Girl Who Kept the Castle. I was blanking for a second there, but the first book, it's a middle grade fantasy story, and it's just so fun and delightful. I don't pick up middle grade all that often, but when I do, this is the kind of story that I'm looking for. I tend to look more so at adult fantasy, occasionally YA. So I missed when this one came out, and thank you to one of you who reminded me. So once I got that reminder, I was like, oh, okay, I gotta go get a copy of this because it'll be just such a fun thing when I'm in the middle of some of the more epic fantasy works and I need a little bit of a break. That one will be perfect. And then last for today, I went ahead and got the broken binding edition of Birth of a Dynasty. I picked this book up recently from the library. It was a newer release, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this one. So I decided, let me see if Broken Binding has an edition. And then when I saw it they did, I was like, okay, well, that's perfect. And it has a little bit of, it's mostly green here, top and bottom, and then they did a little bit more intricate work here on the side. And they also, when you take off the sleeve, have on the naked hardback, it says Birth of a Dynasty with this reflective sun. So I was really pleased with this special edition. It is also, if you open it, signed by the author. And if you're interested in hearing more about this one, I will have my in-depth review linked in the description bar. That's it though for this book haul. I'll have all of the various different things that are related to these, whether they be book reviews or links to my indie bookstores, those sorts of things in the description bar down below. Let me know if you have picked up some of the ones that I haven't jumped into just yet and what your thoughts were on them. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.